Welcome to New York Got Game.
All right, another week, another edition of New York Got Game. And right now, the local basketball teams on the professional side, tale of two different teams. The Nets, they've been struggling, had a rough end to last week. And heading into this week, the New York Knicks, they're playing pretty good. 3 wins in a row. And maybe even more important is the play of Jalen Brunson. Back-to-back 40-point games in Portland and in Sacramento. After the game in Sacramento, Jalen Brunson became the 4th Knickerbocker to score 40 points, at least 40 points, that is, in back-to-back games. He joined Patrick Ewing, Bernard King, and Carmelo Anthony. Great feat for the Knickerbockers all-star point guard who's balling at this moment. The Knicks, they will finish up their West Coast trip this week. They have 2 more games left on that. Monday at Golden State, and then they wrap it up in Denver to close out the trip before they come back home. But this episode, not going to be a lot about the New York teams. Not really going to be any talk about the New York professional teams. We are talking about college basketball. This is an episode coming down on Selection Sunday. So much to talk about who got in, who didn't get in. We're taking it to the campuses. Tim Kitzrow, take it away.
They're hooping on campus.
We're fully into March Madness. We're going to talk some Selection Sunday. We got some questions around Selection Sunday. We're going to answer those questions with one of the best covering college hoops. Some of you know him as the Blackatologist. He's got his work on Anscape, hosting the Up Next podcast, also the Bros Pod with the legendary Bill Rhoden. Again, here with me, representing Brooklyn to the fullest, my guy, Jamal Murphy. What's going on, man?
What's up, man? It's Selection Sunday.
Selection Sunday got you here right after all this came out. Yeah. Glad to have you back. I didn't think you'd be back so quickly. Right. You were just here 2 weeks ago, so I'm glad to have you back. But we had to do this because Selection Sunday probably did not go the way that a lot of people thought it would go, especially if you are a fan of St. John's. And Murph, disappointing day for St. John's fans on Selection Sunday. They do not make the tourney. The committee, this was shocked me, they didn't even have him as one of the first 4 out. Wow. So you said, wow.
Wow.
The question for me is very simple here. Did St. John's get robbed?
They got robbed. They got robbed. You know, it's a question of how egregious the robbery was. But they got robbed, and especially when you consider who they put in instead of them. Virginia, there's no way, when you look at Virginia's resume, there's no way they should have been in ahead of St. John's. They had a much worse net rating. They had a much worse KenPom rating. They had 4 or 5 bad losses compared to St. John's, who had 1 bad loss. They might have had, they had 2 wins over teams in the field compared to St. John's 1 win over teams at-large teams in the field. So there's not really, I can't really tell St. John's fans anything good about what happened. They should feel robbed.
They should feel robbed. It's rough. You mentioned Virginia, which is one of the more questionable teams that got in. You see me here. I wore the Pitt colors today, thinking my Pitt Panthers were going to get in. They did not.
No.
They got robbed, too, just letting everybody know. But when you look at St. John's this season, obviously disappointing finish, especially with how they played towards the end. How do you assess the job that Rick Pitino did in year 1 with the Johnnies? Because many people thought that year 1 was going to end with a tournament appearance. It does not. How do you assess the job that he did in year 1?
I think overall you got to be happy with the job he did. He brought some life back into the Garden. Probably the most important thing. He fielded a competitive team. You know, they should have probably gotten in. If not, they should have been, the first or second team left out. So at least the fan base was engaged throughout. They thought they were in. At the Big East tournament after they lost to Connecticut, he said the New York Post says we're in, so I guess we're in. I guess not, unfortunately. But overall, it's Pitino, so people expect so much. So yes, when Pitino comes in and takes over, you expect to make the tournament right away. That didn't happen this year, but they had a successful season. Finished 5th in the Big East in a tough Big East conference that was rated the number 2 conference in all college basketball this year, despite only getting 3 teams in. But overall, you cannot be down on this year for St. John's, I don't think.
Yeah, I think there's a positive way you can definitely look at it and what they accomplished and how he turned the program around. And speaking of him turning the program around, Rick Pitino came out and said after Selection Sunday was over that the team would not participate in the NIT. What do you make of that decision when coaches say, nah, to the NIT, no thanks, we're not going to do this? What do you make of that decision, especially for St. John's? I kind of like it. It's like, nah, we're not going to do not I was going to say not invited tournament, but that is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I see where you're coming from. I think from Pitino's point of view, obviously he had bigger goals. He probably, to answer your question, the question you asked me, he probably looks at this as a failure of a season because I'm sure he expected to get to the NCAA tournament. He's not happy about it. He wants to move on right away to next year, how we can make the team better. We can go back to his infamous press conference where he lambasted his team and said, he had recruited the wrong players. And yes, they did, I guess, quote unquote, respond and played better after the fact. But I still think Rick Pitino meant some of what he said. So does he really want to keep coaching this team when he knows, he can focus on next year? The portal is wide open. He probably wants to put all his energy in that basket rather than participating in NIT. I do wonder if this decision was like, a lot of teams will have the team vote on it, and if the players, because that's the thing. I do wonder, what the players would want to do, especially the seniors. Do they want to play a few more games and go out with a chance to win some championship or something like that? But who knows? It might have been just Pitino's known to run a dictatorship, so it might have been all him.
As you were saying that, it made me think about something, in the fact that you went back to his infamous press conference where he had a little bit of a rant. I'm surprised he didn't keep some of that same energy for the committee. I thought he might have some of that energy for the committee here and maybe have a little rant for them, but we didn't get that.
I don't know. Has he spoken?
He has spoken.
He has spoken. Okay.
He has spoken.
Well, Pitino probably wants to take the high road. He's probably happy his son got into the tournament, even though they had a very good team. I'm sure at some point someone will ask Pitino about, what he thinks about the committee this year, and he'll probably have something to say to them. I think he just took the high road for now, but we know Pitino and the high road is a. It's very sometimesy.
Yeah, you wonder if some more of the truth is coming out there. All right, we talked about St. John's. Got to talk about Seton Hall. They also don't make the tourney. Last time you were up here, we talked about how they were on the bubble, but they were the second of the first 4 teams out. Do they have a legit beef about not making the tournament?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm in that Seton Hall locker room, I definitely have a beef. They finished 4th in the Big East. 13 wins in the Big East. As I said earlier, that's the second best, highest rated conference according to Ken Pom in the nation, and they only get 3 teams. So they were that first Big East team left out, having a great Big East season. At the same time, their resume was always problematic. As I said last time I was here, they had high net numbers, they had high Ken Pom numbers, similar to Virginia. I think their overall resume was probably better than Virginia's, but Virginia hopped over a bunch of teams that they probably shouldn't have. But I don't. So when I look at Seton Hall, coming into the selection show, I felt like they might get left out, whereas St. John's I was pretty confident would get in. So I think St. John's has more of a beef, but if I'm Seton Hall, I'm pretty upset.
Yeah, a lot of teams not happy in the New York City metro area. Now, speaking of the New York area, Wagner. They are the only New York City team named to the dance on Selection Sunday. Well, sort of, because they will play Howard in the first 4. Do you like their chances to beat the Bison and advance past the first 4?
It's a tough one. I think it'll be close to a pick'em type of game with Howard. Howard is actually pretty good. They have Blakeney, who's the coach. He's the former Duke player. He's kind of turning that program around. They're getting some decent recruits. So that'll be a tough first game, but I do think it's a pretty even matchup, so I give them a decent chance to make it out of there. But then after that, they're probably coming back to Staten Island.
Yeah, all right. Well, see, that doesn't give us any hope for the New Yorkers. New Yorkers are like, we want to run here. I was talking to my producer about this, and it was like, can we even ask about a deep run? Should we be thinking about deep runs if you're fans of New York basketball?
I mean, you can ask, but
that doesn't mean you have an answer.
It's highly unlikely. There have been 2 16 seeds who've won their first game, so it's possible now. It used to be unheard of, but things like that happen. But the number 1 seeds are so strong this year. I can't really see it. So I think it's a good building block for Wagner, and they could probably build on it for next year. They have a good young coach, so I think it's definitely a positive for Wagner.
Oh, no doubt.
It's a positive for the city. It's a positive for Staten Island. They'll get some press off of this.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully they can build off it.
No doubt. If they do happen to get an upset and they make tournament, they will be clipping your audio and playing that for motivation.
Please use this as motivation. Please.
Do that. Other team in the area that we have back dancing is St. Peter's. They are as a 15 seed. They will play second seeded Tennessee on Thursday in the Midwest region. We saw the magic they had a couple of years ago. Will there be more Peacock magic in 2024?
That's a tough act to follow with what they did with Shaheen Holloway when he was there and they made the deep run, I think, to the Elite Eight.
Yeah.
Right? So that was amazing. They were surprise winner of their conference this year. So that's a positive for them. Again, it's going to be tough. Tennessee Tennessee was in the running for a 1 seed up until about a few days ago. So that's another tough matchup. Tennessee's big, strong, physical team. I don't know if they have the bodies to match up, but anything's possible, as St. Peter's themselves showed a couple of years ago. But I'm not going to pick that one. I'm not going to pick St. Peter's to win this game in my bracket, but I'll root for them. I'll root for them hard. And again, I think it's a similar situation to Wagner. It's a positive that they were able to pull off the upset victory in the conference tournament and get to this level. They're going to get some press out of it, and I think you take that and you're happy with that.
All right. With all this being said, folks, you hear Murph saying the teams that are in from the New York area should take what they have, be happy with it. St. John's not in, Seton Hall not in. Okay? So my final thing here. Got Wagner, got St. Peter's. You said it's good for those programs, good for the area. But with just that happening, and I mean no offense to those teams, but just those teams getting in, was this a disappointing college season for the New York metro area where we didn't see the big names, the bigger schools get in?
No, I think it was a disappointment, especially, well, if you go to the beginning of the year, maybe it's not so disappointing, but having, gone through the season and you have Seton Hall finishing 4th and St. John's finishing 5th in the Big East Conference, you expect your 4th and 5th place teams out of the Big East to make the NCAA tournament. That didn't happen, and especially for St. John's, they were snubbed. I don't think there's any question in my mind about that. So I think you can't be happy right now if you're a St. John's fan. And the same thing for Seton Hall, who finished ahead of St. John's in the standings, 13-win season, as I said before in the Big East, beat UConn, had some other big wins, beat Marquette, and to not be included in the tournament. And then you see some lesser teams with lesser resumes that did get in. I mean, those are the two biggest schools in New York and New Jersey as far as basketball is concerned, and to not get them in the tournament is a big blow to New York City.
Nah, it is. But I do think, we talked about it, I think last time you talked about how you think the future is bright for college basketball here in the New York metro area. A lot of things you can build on with St. John's as well as Seton Hall, Shaheen Holloway, and the good job he's doing out there. And we'll see how some other schools bounce back next season. But it's not a very happy selection Sunday for the New York metro area teams. Before I get you out of here, I know this has all just happened. I know the field has just been set. Do you have your pick? Do you have your Final Four teams or who you think is winning it all? Have you thought about it yet? Have you had a chance to think about it yet? Is there a team you really believe in that you're like, all right, I'm backing this team?
Well, I haven't looked at the full bracket yet. I mean, obviously I know who's in the tournament, but I would, the number one seeds are so tough. In this, all season long, there have been 3 teams that have separated themselves: UConn, Purdue, and Houston. So I think you're going to see a lot of brackets. A lot of people go chalk in picking the brackets and picking the 1 seeds to get there. But I think UConn has been the best team in college basketball by far. It's going to be very hard for me to pick against them in any game. I don't care, Final Four, championship game. It's going to be hard. I can't see a team that I could be, relatively confident would beat UConn. So I think UConn is the favorite. Also, as a 2 seed, I like Marquette. They lost Tyler Kolek, their best player, for about the last few weeks or so, and they were still able to win, get to the finals of the Big East tournament, get a 2 seed without him. And now Kolek comes back for the NCAA tournament. Shaka Smart has struggled in the tournament ever since he took VCU to the Final Four years ago. So I think this is the year maybe he breaks that trend and gets back at least to about the Sweet 16 and maybe further than that.
Okay. See, I mean, look, there's a lot of in terms of the local area, there's a lot of UConn fans around here in the New York metro area. So that gives some local love if you like this. So UConn is your team you really like. It's the best team playing in the country. Marquette, a team to watch out for as well, too. That is Jamal Murphy. Check out his work hosting on the Up Next podcast, also on the Bros podcast with the legendary Bill Rhoden. Also does some great work on Anscape. This man is the best. Call him the blackatologist. You would have had St. John's in.
Yes.
You would have had Pitt in.
Yes.
I feel like we need to get this man on the committee. That's what we need to do. Because the committee is out here,
the committee is looking shaky right now.
Committee is looking shaky now. This man is not shaky, though. Murph, appreciate you coming back on here, man. Thank you so much.
They're hooping on campus.
All right, that does it for this Selection Sunday edition of the show. We've got to bounce. Special thanks to my guest, Jamal Murphy, a.k.a. the Blackatologist, for joining us in studio for the second time this month. You see how March Madness goes. We will see how all the teams fare in the big dance, but we've got to get up out of there. Before we do, special thanks, as always, to my director, Zach Taub, my producer, Brian Wachowski, and my editor, Catherine Cooper, for the amazing work on this show. I'm Dexter Henry, and we'll see you next time on New York Got Game.
And thanks for watching New York Got Game. Boom shakalaka.